Three, two, one. Hey there, Prosperity Practice. How you doing there today? This is Brandon Hanley, and today I'm joined by Regina A. Lawrence. Regina is a soulful business strategist, and she is a former trial attorney and law school professor turned soulful business and life strategist. She's found that many entrepreneurs have brilliant ideas and dreams, but don't know how to take that dream and create a system or structure to make that dream and idea profitable. That's where she jumps in and she is able to bring consistency, system, and structure for you and really take your soul driven idea and convert that into an awesome business. And I love it, right? I'm super excited because that's right up this. And not only that, right? Regina also comes from kind of like my hometown and area, and you're down in Arizona right now, but you're from the Northeast, and you've got like this little bit of a grit and a little bit of a punch that you really only find like kind of up in the Northeast. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Tell me something. Tell me something we can help you celebrate today.
Oh man, I just had a new client sign up today. Very excited to help her with her business and to help her create the program she wants to. So that's what I'm celebrating right now.
Awesome. I love it. And tell me something, man. This we're smack dab in the middle of a pandemic, whether or not you believe the hype or not. Everybody's on different sides of the fence. Is this a hoax? Is it whatever? Nobody really cares. But for what it's worth, we are shut down in the United States of America. How's your business been during this whole thing?
So I have two businesses. I have a social media agency and I have a coaching practice. And my coaching practice has slowed a little bit just with people who want to wait to start until their brick and mortar opens. But my social media agency has really been picking up during this time.
Okay.
So it's a mixed bag for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, everybody needs a digital strategy, especially now, right? Otherwise, how are they going to reach out? And we always talk about like that post-COVID plan. Is that something you talk about with some of your people?
For sure. I think this has shown us that, one, it has shown us the ways that we can stretch and the ways we can do business in a way that we didn't think about before. It's also, for me, really put into place, like, how do I create business and how do I create even greater automation and evergreening in my business? So that way, if something like this ever happens again, and by the way, it will, because the government knows they can shut us down and lock us down. How do I get out of Dodge and go to Costa Rica and live on the beach for a couple months instead of in the chaos?
Right.
Yeah.
It does sound nice. I love the idea though of trying to keep that content evergreen. So we started off on a tangent, and that's just kind of how I go. Let's do a little bit of a backstory though. So Regina, I love your backstory. Why don't you go ahead and share it with this audience a little bit? Just kind of jumping in from pre-crying on the floor, and then right after that.
So my background is I was a federal trial attorney for the city of Philadelphia, and then I moved into a white-collar fraud litigator and investigator role. Prior to going to law school, I always had this mindset that like I had to be an achiever and I had to be successful and I had to just pursue things that my family and society saw as good. So get a good job, get a good education, find a good partner, and you live a good life and you'll be happy. And so I realized that I'd spent the first 25, 26 years of my life pursuing this happiness and this peace through accomplishments and through external realities. And I really hit a pivotal moment when I realized I was in my office and I was working on a case for a really big client. I think I was 27 at this point. And I started to have a panic attack. And I was no stranger of panic and anxiety. It fueled me. It got me through everything in my life. And this was different. And I remember closing my office door, laying down on my office floor, and I'm, dressed in a pencil skirt. I have a pair of Louboutin high heels on, and I just laid there and cried. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but life doesn't have to be this hard and it doesn't have to be this stressful. And I'm going to figure out a way to not live the rest of my life like this. And so that experience of being like, okay, like you did everything you were supposed to do and you're still very unfulfilled and very unhappy. What now? And so that launched me into this whole new world of mindset and spirituality.
I love it. There's actually a little bit before that I caught listening to one of the podcasts when I caught you on there. 9 brothers and sisters?
Mhm.
How many is that? 9 brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have 4 brothers and I have 4 sisters.
Yeah, that's got to be hectic. And not only like kind of like just being caught up in that size of a family, right? Because I'm imagining like that's always a whirlwind, and that's if everything's going well. And memory serves me correctly, like things were not always going well in that household. Yes or no?
No. So I grew up, I'm from a family where there's a lineage of a lot of addiction. And I grew up surrounded with a lot of alcohol and drug addiction and the codependency issues that go along with that. And the, just the, all the things that go along with growing up around addiction. But we were like, the thing about my family is like, we looked like this normal, middle class family, like loving, seemingly loving parents who got divorced when I was 13 to our shock. We grew up in a neighborhood with a big house, and we were this family that looked like this nice Catholic Italian family, but really on the inside there was a lot of trauma and a lot of hurt and a lot of addiction.
Yeah, no, that's it's a tough place to be, right? And it's a tough place, I think, to establish your identity, because the inside does not look like the outside, right? Which I think kind of plays into where you ended up, anyways, right? I had this interesting thought of I listened to the for a minute you were an anxiety coach, yes, yeah, is that right?
Yeah, I was, and I still do what I did as an anxiety coach. I still bring into my coaching now. Yeah.
Right. No, and I love it, right? Because it's all about kind of evolution in who you are as a person, what it is that you bring, right? Um, for a second there, I thought to myself, I was like, do you think that, and you may have linked it this way, like anxiety attacks, is that like a sign that you're just not living your life's purpose?
I think it can be. I think that, a lot of people have different thoughts and schools of thought about stress and how we respond to stress with anxiety. I think majority of anxiety is a habited pattern of behavior. I
Mm,
grew up in a household where my mother was always anxious. It was her phrase, I'm so anxious. I have so much
mm,
anxiety.
mm.
And so even as a small kid, like I have agita, you're giving me agita, like you're giving me anxiety. And
You're not going to hear that anywhere else but the Northeast, though, by the
I
way. And, I know you give me the agita.
exactly. And so like I grew up with that identity as a kid where,
Mm,
you know, anxiety is just a way of being. It's a way, it was almost synonymous for me, like with productivity.
mm,
And what I realized was that like a lot of anxiety is actually born out of a desire to control.
mm,
And control is an illusion. We have control over nothing. We have
mm.
control over our thoughts. We have control over our reactions and our responses.
Right.
We have some control over our body, but we can lose that with illness. And so yeah, so I think that some anxiety is a sign of like shit needs to change.
Right.
And but I think it's a sign of so many things.
Sure, sure. And I love that you kind of hit on that too, so far as like you know, mindset goes. A lot of it's just these learned tendencies that that's what you grew up around, right? Even with my own kids, I'll see them like they'll plop down, they'll be like, I'm so tired. And I'm kind of the mindset, I'm like, you are quite literally made of energy, right? Like you're not tired, I mean, you know what I mean? Like that, because when it's like 5 o'clock in the evening or like midday or something, I'm just like, no, you're not. That's
Yeah.
just something you've heard one of us say,
Right.
right? So I totally get that. Let's talk about what it's like then to, kind of spin this business up. You remember kind of the journey to even saying, hey, I'm a soulful business owner, this is what I do in that area, like because religion or even just talking about being spiritual can go down so many roads, right?
Mhm.
So let's talk about your foray into that, because it sounds like, again, you started kind of like as an anxiety coach, but that kind of led to more, something
Yeah.
sort of opened up for you, and I'm curious what that looked like.
So, from a really young age, I have had some spiritual gifts that through society and conditioning I've suppressed. But I've had a lot of different spiritual gifts where I would dream things, I would know things before they happened. I always had a knowing about things. I can't describe it more than a knowing. And I would see things as a child. And I knew from a very young age that my little brother was the same way. And we couldn't tell people. And so just like any muscle, your spiritual muscles, if you suppress them, you're not able to lift like you used to. And as I started to go through my own mindset waking up, um, I really started to get into meditation and allowing the white space and the silence. And I started to feel these gifts come back online again. And, for me, I'm this rational lawyer who show me the reason, show me the proof. Like that's how I'm educated and that's how my brain works. I'm super analytical, but I'm also have these spiritual gifts that I can't always explain them, but if I know something's going to happen, it happens. Like if I get guidance on something, I am got like the two were happening at the same time. And so initially I was like, okay, like I'm gonna after I started the mindset coaching business and the stress and anxiety business, people were asking me, how are you building your brand? You're doing such a good job building your brand online. How are you doing it? How are you building your business? And I realized that in starting my coaching business, I became an expert in a lot of things: social media, branding, marketing, doing I'm a learner. So if I want to learn how to do something, I learn the whole process. Like I really am a sponge for things. So I realized I could kind of take that stress and anxiety coaching and pivot it to business coaching. But what I was realizing was the business coaching wasn't fulfilling, and it wasn't fulfilling what I'm here to do. Because for me, with business, people ask entrepreneurs, what's your why? Why are you doing the thing you're doing? Right. And that's great. But like if a mom says to me, I'm building this business because I have kids. Well, great. But what about those kids? Why is it your kids that make you want to do this? What do you want to do with your kids? Right. And so the same thing with a spiritual entrepreneur, like we have desires on our hearts of things we want to do. And there's a really deep soul reason why we're on this earth in this moment in time doing the things that we want to do. And so I really had to work through the fact that I was worried that people would think I was crazy because I am a spiritual and rational woman. And then I decided to just say, fuck it. This is who I am. This is how I show up in the world. I'm very intelligent and I'm very spiritual, and I marry the two. And if people don't like it, they're not my people. And I
Yeah.
just decided one day that I was going to bring the two together and launch a whole coaching business just around this.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it too. There's so much in that. I know that it sounded to me too like when you first started going off and running, you were doing like long form blog writing and kind of researching the copywriting thing,
Mhm.
right? Learning that marketing bit, right? And that's kudos to you, because that's not easy.
Mhm.
That's it's a challenge to be able to figure out how to do that type of writing, figure out what your market is. And then this part where you just kind of burst through and you're like, listen, I'm just going to go with it. Like I can't keep hiding behind um, purely executive coaching when that's not where my heart is. Right.
Right.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about that, where it's like the integration of your spiritual self in the material world, right? Like this is one that like I think a lot. And look, for me, it's a challenge, and I see it as a challenge for a lot of other spiritual people, right? Integrating the spiritual with the quote unquote real, and then like the money aspect of it. Like, well, I don't want to deal with money. Like, I mean, that's tough for them. So how have you been able to kind of navigate that area?
Mm. So for me, there is no separation between who I am as Regina, the human business coach, and Regina, the spiritual woman. It's the same thing. And something that I teach a lot, and this is part of my brand and in my coaching, is that you can be all of the things. We live in a society where oftentimes people say, if you are X profession, you need to look like A, B, and C. If you're a spiritual woman, you need to be pure. You need to be on a yoga mat and you need to be like meditating all the time. Well, fuck that, because not all women are like that, right?
Right.
Or
And who, listen, it's tired. That is quite literally tired, right? And it sucks. It's like, it sucks.
Well, it's like society gives us boxes and that's what we're supposed to be. And if you don't fit into that box, then it makes you less legitimate. And one of my first spiritual friends and teachers is this girl in Philly. Her name's Reagan. She's a tarot card reader and she does energy stuff.
What's her last name?
Tilton.
All
right. She's amazing. And she was my first real spiritual friend in Philadelphia. And she is almost 6 feet tall. She's like tall, thin, giant boobs, always half naked. And she's like this spiritual powerhouse. And I remember meeting her and I was like, that is a woman who she is and she doesn't care what anybody thinks. Right. And that's what I realized. So like, we still are stigmatized in society. Like if you're a female attorney, you're supposed to look, talk, and act a certain way. Right. If you can't be too pretty, can't be too gay, you can't be too this, you can't be too that. And so I realized that I'm not going to live my life like that. Like I am who I am. And there's a lot of polarities in who I am. It's very confusing to people and I don't care because that's how we all are. We are all like that, but we try to fit ourselves in boxes so that people can understand us and comprehend us. And so that's how I, with the spiritual and the business, like I am very spiritual and I'm very smart and I'm very fucking inappropriate. And I could tell you a dick joke in 1 minute and I could talk to you about channeling angels in the next, right? Like, and that doesn't
that's relevant.
And right. And that doesn't make one more or less legitimate than the other, right? And so that's how I approach everything. And that's like my mission, especially in working with women. Like you can be all the things. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks about you. Right. The thing you asked about money, and this is something I see a lot with spiritual entrepreneurs where there's almost like this guilt about charging for services or, you know, we have to rewind back and we have to think about what is money. Like a lot of us have these preconditioned notions about money that come from childhood conditioning and come from these old sayings like money is the root of all evil and like associating some sort of like low vibration with money when actually money is energy. Money is abundant. Like money gives us the ability to serve at such a high level. The more money you have, I think the more good you can do in the world. So why wouldn't I want all the money?
Absolutely right. There's more people you can serve with it. And I love it. And it's funny that you bring it up. I just got like this random packet of incense. And it's one of them's money, right? And I'm like,
yeah.
And why I bring that up is because I've definitely had conversations as I during my journeys, and people are like, money's no different than like the air that you breathe, right? Like if you take a breath and you stop breathing, which do you want more? Do you want money or do you want that next breath? So which one's more important to you? And as I was burning this incense, it's like, oh wow, look, there I am. I'm literally breathing in money. And kind of like, I was like, I love it. So anyways, for me, that was a challenge for me too. I'll have to admit, like, kind of grew up just as like kind of money being like this thing, right? This thing in the way of whatever. And I think that A, it's just like you said, it's the approach of it. But B was reading the book of The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. Like,
oh yeah.
I was like, this makes all the sense, right? Like, and it finally, like, I mean, things clicked then, and I was all in. So, absolutely. And I think that even if somebody can just look at it as an even exchange for energy, right? Like, hey, look, it's just an energy exchange. You're there, you're doing a service, you're provide. If I go to a restaurant and they provide me a service, I leave a tip. right?
Mhm.
You, you're providing a service. So I love it.
And I
Um,
think we also have to think about, like, I had a call with a girl today, and she does like spiritual work where she works with women and helps them to like feel like women who are transitioning and pivoting in life and in business,
yeah,
where she helps them get to their highest energetic frequency so that they can perform, they can pivot. Like, she essentially helps them change their life and their perspective, and she charges nothing for it. And I said, you literally offer a service where you are helping to change somebody's entire life.
right,
That's invaluable. Like, why
right,
aren't you charging more for it?
right.
Yeah.
Well, I was listening to you may know this name, Dan Kennedy. He's a copywriter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got this one session where he's talking about, like, exchanging people's money. If you don't take their money, they're going to give it to somebody else. It may as well be you,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and again, that was another thing that just kind of like resonated. I was like, you're right. Like, that person, even if they don't have much money and they have bad spending habits and all these other things, I'd rather they invest in what I had to give them than maybe they're going to go buy, 2 cases of beer, whatever, right?
Totally.
So something like that, right?
And I think anybody who is struggling with charging their value, something that have done and I teach people to do is, if you have a service that you offer, sit down and make a list of all of the value that you provide people for what you charge them. Like, see it, like really map it out. And when you look at it, look at the value exchange between what you're offering and what they're paying. And then ask yourself, like, is this a fair value exchange? Because maybe you'll look at it and you'll say, no, I should add a few more things to this. Like, I should beef this up for what I'm charging. Or you might look at what you're charging and say, oh, I don't charge enough for what I'm doing for this person. But I think like the analytical mind needs that. It needs that comparison. For me, with my coaching, I need to know what I'm offering, and I need to be very clear on the value that I bring to the table for my clients. If I wasn't clear on that, I couldn't charge what I charge.
Sure. Do you, do you do like an ROI sheet for your people? Like, how does that look for you? Like, that conversation?
I like to just have that conversation with them and have them journal it out for me
Mm,
and show me and talk to me about it. And I have other ways, like when we figure out rates, like obviously I look at what the market is charging and I look at, what type of business they have and all of that. But I also, like, there is a part of it that intuitively you need to, you could have a product or service that you offer somebody and the market value is $3,000 for it. But if you don't feel in alignment with that value, even if it's market value, if it feels like too much, you're never going to get $3,000 for it because you're not in alignment with that
right,
price.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, definitely. I've definitely had that conversation. I've definitely had that in myself, right? So instead of, maybe somebody's not feeling that they're worth that value, what do you do? Do you help step them up into that value place as you're working with them? What do you do with them?
I think we need to start with people where they're comfortable or stretch them a little bit. And then we can slowly, incrementally, because it'll be different things for people to know that they're worth the value that they want to charge. So if you're working with somebody and they're a coach and you think that for 3 months of one-on-one coaching, they should be charging about $3,000, but they're not comfortable with more than charging 1,500.
Mm,
I'm not going to start them at $3,000. I'm going to start them lower. They're going to start coaching people, and then they're going to get testimonials of how they've changed people's lives. And they're going to really start to see, like, wow, I'm really good at these certain things in being a coach. And then you incrementally increase the price. That way they're in alignment with what they're charging.
I love it. I love it. I interviewed one guy, Vince Pugliese, who, what he'd done was he chose like the golden day on his calendar, right? And he had all the kinds of bookings, and what he would do, like on that golden day, he would charge like maybe double or just like what he would love to be paid that day, right? Be like, maybe I'm worth more and I'm not charging enough. He said, all right, this is the golden day. And he would float that out there. And if somebody said yes, he knew he was worth that much and he needed to raise the rest of his numbers. If he didn't get that number, he didn't wallow in it. He just went out that day and did something fun, like with his family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love it. So let's just trying to meander here. Again, one of the things I want to try and share here with like this audience is that you can do the soulful business. You do a good job, I think, of pivoting people and taking them from their corporate life and kind of into this business, right? So let's talk. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I think the pivot from corporate to owning your own business and having a business that's more soul aligned, I like for people to do it with a plan. So I like for people to start to develop the concept and start to, if I'm coaching someone who wants to be a coach, they have started to build the business and they start to bring in some clients. And we start to get really clear on what they're doing and why they're doing it for the pivot. That's what I did before I left practice. I started my coaching business before I left. I left faster than I would probably recommend for my clients to, but I'm also a gritty girl from Philadelphia, and I'll I'll do whatever it takes. You know what I mean? Like, but it was hard. It was really hard when I did it. And I
When,
really like for people to take their time and to like create a plan of action.
what about like right about now, right? What if somebody's kind of, because of where we are right now, transition, they're furloughed, they're they're laid off, they're just literally not able to go do the work that they've been able to do. Have you been able to work with anybody like that during this time?
Yeah, my recommendation for people who are in that particular situation is quick, dirty, and simple. Like quick action.
Mm.
Like get really clear on what you want to do, why you want to do it, the mechanism that you're going to use to serve, and do it quickly. Like there are ways that you can build a business online for free. Essentially, you can build a free website, you can build a free email list, you can build an opt-in for your email list. You can do everything. I actually wrote a post on this on my Instagram about like the 5 applications you need to use to start a business for free today.
What would you say?
And
What are they? What are they?
so the first one is you can build a free website on Wix or on there was one other one I can't remember, but I know Wix for sure. Oh, on GoDaddy, Wix and GoDaddy, you can build a website for free. You can build an email list initially for free on MailChimp. You can also build, I believe you can build your lead magnet, like the landing page. You can build it on what's it called? MailChimp, and you can build it on Google Drive. And that's it. And then you can build an opt-in for free on a free version of Canva. Oh, you can go into Canva, you can make a free logo, you can pick free brand colors,
Sure.
and you can literally have a branded free website, opt-in, lead magnet, all of it. Like you could literally, if you really wanted to do it, you could do it tonight in like 4 hours.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I love it. Absolutely. I'll throw one more in there for some people that are trying to monetize their mail list. There's this song like, and it's like a free plugin. It's called Campaign Z. It's like a front end that'll add somebody to the mail list, and you can charge a subscription fee or a one-time thing for that. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah, you can spin it all up in that quick for $0. It's just a matter of kind of putting yourself out there. Let's talk about that for a second. Like putting yourself out there, right? Like I mean, do you recall? I think writing your first blog is definitely one where you're just kind of putting yourself out there. That's one. But then like maybe your first podcast, your first video, the interviews, right? Those firsts. How were they? What was that like to put yourself out there like that?
Hmm. You know, there's a reason why entrepreneurs are obsessed with self-development and mindset work, because everything that we do, especially when we start our business, is really stretches us because we're doing things we've never done before. And it's not like, I would say for me, I started with videos. I started with writing long formed captions and posts. And I decided as I was building my brand that I love to tell story. I'm a storyteller. I love to write. And so I decided I was going to use that as my first way to connect. So I started just speaking my truth and telling my stories and sharing about my life. That wasn't hard for me because I like to do it. Then I started to do videos. I would go live on Facebook all the time. And the first few times it's hard. Like you're like, nobody's here, nobody's watching. But I mean, nobody's watching because nobody knows who you are yet. Like you got to start somewhere.
Right.
And then Instagram stories are just the best tool for people to get to know you and to get to know your everyday life. And again, it's hard and it's weird. You're like filming your life in a way you've never have before. Now I love it. I film everything. My friends are like, oh, we're Z-list celebrities on Regina's story. Like, so you just get used to it. None of it, like, it's not intuitive to being a human. Like a lot of these things, like filming yourself, recording yourself talking, like, but you just have to like do it.
Right. Right. No, I agree. I still remember all my, it's kind of, I remember my first time, like, my first podcast, right? Sitting in a corner, just kind of like recording, like really soft voice and just kind of like, and this is what's happening, soft voice, right?
Yeah.
And just kind of tucked away. I'm like, hope nobody hears me, but I'm about to send this to the rest of the world. And as soon as you press that button and you send it out, you're like, oh shit, am I going to blow up? Am I going to catch on fire? No, nothing happens. And that's okay. And my first Facebook Live, I had a USB headset plugged into the computer at the time. And so the mic was trying to pick it up on the US. I did like 7 or 8 minutes and people were like, God, I can't hear you. I was like, what? Let me get closer. And like 7 minutes of not even being able to deliver it all, feeling like super embarrassed. I think I definitely, like one of my kids was like jumping around on me, and that's okay. Like it was a podcast for fatherhood, and that was what I was doing then. And then I realized like everything was no good. I unplugged it and I did it again, like immediately. I was like, you know what? I was like, I can't put any space in between. Can't put any space in between that. I got to go again. And with doing videos, just it becomes natural, right? I think walking wasn't easy, right? But we figured it out.
Yeah. And I think like we see people, like when we get started, we see people who have been doing it and we think like, oh, like that's so good. Like, how did you do that? Like, how are you like that? Like, I'll never be like that. I got so good with doing videos because before I started my business as a coach, when I was working full time, I was a network marketer. So I did network marketing for a little bit. And the best thing about that was it taught me how to sell. It taught me how to go live. It taught me how to do really uncomfortable things that like were not intuitive to me. So now it's like like somebody could say to me, hey, go live on my Facebook right now. I'd be like, okay. And I'd just go live and talk about whatever they want me to talk about. Right.
Sure.
I wasn't always like that. Like,
I think that you bring up something really, kind of poignant there, right? When we're talking about creating a business, and if you've never been in sales and you're doing the spiritual coaching thing, closing the sale, asking for the money, right? And what do you teach your clients about that?
I mean, the first thing is the thing that we talked about earlier. It's feeling like you're worth what you're asking for. I have no hesitation asking for what I charge as a coach, and I don't negotiate it. Like I might give people like a monthly plan, so smaller payments, but I charge what I charge and I offer what I offer.
Right.
But I'm also very much in alignment with what I offer and the value. So that's the first thing. You have to feel aligned. Like you have to have a soul alignment with what you're doing to be able to ask for the sale. The second thing about asking for the sale is like, I don't even feel like I'm asking for the sale. The way that I coach and the way that I run sales calls is I get on and I talk to them about them. It's not about me. Right. What's your problem? What's your issue? What do you need a solution to? And I really pay attention to what their pain points are. And I think about it. Do I solve these pain points? Can I make their life easier with the services and the skills that I have? Like today I had a sales call. I had 2 sales calls today, and both of the girls, I can solve their problems in their businesses, hands down. And so I made that very clear. This is what I do. This is how I work. This is how I solve your problems. This is what we do together. And this is what it looks like. And by the end of the call, both of the girls were like, I need you. How much do you charge? Right. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't even think of it as like selling. It's like, what's your problem? And do I have a solution? And then explaining to them the solution that I have and why I can serve them. And then the price is just is what it is.
Right. Right. I love that. So I mean, you're simply looking to serve, and that's what it is. It's more of a service call.
Totally. Everything. And I coach, like, this is the thing too. If anybody's listening that's a coach, if people have never coached with a coach before, they don't quite know what a coaching experience is like. So give them an experience. When you get on a sales call with them, how do I serve you today? And what do you need help with in your business? Like for me, people that I'm getting on calls with have been watching me for a long time and they know people who know me. So they've been referred to me. So I have a lot of credibility that's been built up that people know that I'm a successful coach. If you're beginning, that's okay. If you don't have that yet, but
Yes,
get on the phone.
social
Exactly.
currency.
Yeah, totally. Get on the call with them and offer them a solution to a problem that they're having now. Coach them and give them that experience.
Right,
And then by the end of the call, they're like, wow, you gave me so much value. How do I work with you?
right, right. We met through, so you and I, we met through Lisa Archer Rovistelli, and
Mhm.
she was my first coach. And what was so awesome for me in that coaching experience was having somebody that was on my side, right?
Yeah.
Having somebody that was like, I still remember when I told her I wanted to do podcasting instead of like all this other stuff. It wasn't like, what are you thinking? We've worked so hard for this. She was like, well,
Yeah.
how can I help you do that? What are you trying to do? I was like, why aren't you saying no? Right. And
Yeah.
so it was like giving me, the freedom to chase my dreams.
Totally.
And so when you've got somebody like that, when you're able to do that for somebody else, that's fire,
Hmm.
right? I mean, telling somebody that, yeah, they should go live their dreams, right?
Hmm.
And then showing them how they can do it. I mean, when you talked about it earlier, it's like that's invaluable. Like when you're changing lives
Totally.
like that, and really so. She was a sales coach then, and we had lots of fun talking about like this stuff applies like everywhere, like you talked about earlier, right? You can apply this in business, you can apply this in family, but like you're choosing right now to kind of do this sole purpose. And there's one of the phrases that you use quite a bit, and I was just curious on the language, and you probably got it somewhere, but soul contract. Talk to us about what a soul contract is.
So I believe that every person, before we come to this earth in this lifetime, our soul comes for a purpose, and that's a soul contract. We have a contract with our soul. Our soul have contracts with other souls that we make before we come to earth, so that we can have certain lessons lived out in this lifetime. And so I believe that our businesses are either can be a fulfillment of that soul contract. I think that mine is, or our business should be in alignment with that. Like maybe a woman's soul contract is that she's supposed to come to this lifetime and get married and have a baby, and that baby for a certain reason to fulfill the contract. So maybe creating the business is to assist her so that she can be a mother and live that life and do those things, right? So I don't think we don't haphazardly come to earth when we're born. Like I don't think it happens like that. We come for a distinct purpose, and I'm all about helping people figure out how their businesses can fulfill that or assist that.
Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. Um, I think that that's one of the things too that for me, like kind of awakening to any soul purpose or any type of awakening was kind of later in my life. Seems like it hit you a little bit earlier. Do you feel like that awakening kind of happens when it's meant to happen? So you're like, oh man, I've got a contract to fulfill.
Yeah, I do. I think we have to be open to it. And like, there's little knocks and like pings through our life, and we often ignore them. And for most of us, we have to end up like on the floor of our office or, you
But
know,
so that's one thing that kills me, right? Like you always see like people like, oh, you got to hit rock bottom before you can bounce back up, and that wasn't it for me, right? Like I definitely was not rock bottom, and nobody wants to hear like, you know what, it wasn't that much for me. Like I just decided to make this shift, and it was just decided. Nobody fucking wants to hear that. They're like,
yeah,
what do you mean? Or, like when I quit drinking, for example, right? They're like, what did you hit your wife? I was like, why do I need to hit my wife to stop drinking? That doesn't it just wasn't serving me anymore.
yeah, exactly.
Um, and so I love it. I love it though. So that's what I was gonna say. there's like that feeling that you get, right, when you're laying there and or like those knocks at the door. And I think that what you're referring to me, when I think about it, I'm going through like Joseph Campbell's, you know, Hero of a Thousand Faces, right? The hero's call, right?
Mhm.
So I think there's a penalty if you don't answer that feeling, right? Like, and do you talk to that at all? Like, if somebody comes up to you like, I'm feeling this spiritual way, and I'm feeling this inside, but I don't think I should answer it. Do you talk to them through that? What do you do with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the penalty is like living a life where you're feeling unfulfilled. Like the desires of our hearts and like the desires that we have to do things, like they're there for a reason.
Hmm.
Like we have them because there's something in us that wants to fulfill that in one way, shape, or form. And it might not look the way we think it may not end up looking the way we think it's going to look. But the punishment, quote unquote, is just that we're going to feel your punishment could be spending a lifetime wishing. For me, it would have been spending a legal career wishing I was doing something that was more meaningful or where I had more time freedom and life freedom.
Would you say, like, I mean, to me, that would be the definition of hell,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean,
Totally.
the purest definition of hell would be not to live out your soul contract.
Yeah. And most people live in that.
Yeah, you know, I got plenty of theories on that one though too. But I mean, like, you know, when you know you're taking medication or something like that, you're really just trying to silence that kind of
Yeah.
thought, right? Like,
Totally.
you go messing with the mind like that, you're gonna tune out some things
Yep.
that you're missing out. So you've got a book you're working on. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the book I'm working on is it's going to sound funny because it's a little bit different than what I do as a spiritual business coach, but I spend a lot of time talking to women and working with women. And I have also spent a lot of my life dating and dating and dating. And I realized that there's no books out there that speak to me the way that I would like to be spoken to in dating. And I wanted to create a book that kind of highlights the humorous things that have happened in my dating life
Mhm.
and the lessons that have come from all of those relationships, dates, one night stands, all the things. And so I've been writing this book now where each chapter is a different lesson and a different person and every person has like a funny nickname, like, because my friends and everybody I date, we give them like nicknames. And so
Right.
it's like, what's the lesson and what can I teach you from that lesson? Like, for example, I sit with women all the time and they're like, I just can't meet somebody who I want to be with. And I just keep ending up with these losers. And I say to them, well, what do you want? What do you want to be with? And my one girlfriend was like, I wrote about this in the book. She was like, I want someone who's nice to me and who has a job. And I said, honey, that's like asking for air. Like, that should be a given that he's nice to you and he has a job.
Right,
What
right.
are like the core value pillars that you want in a man, like the future father of your children and a husband? And
Right.
let's get very clear about it. And so like that whole chapter is about like, if we don't know what we want and we don't get very clear on it, we're calling everyone in energetically. So
Right.
how do we get clear? So it's all about that. So it's funny, it's a little bit vulgar, but it's also soulful, kind of like me. Vulgar, funny, and soulful.
I love it. I love it. I think it's entertaining, but I think you also hit right there too on look, that's a lesson that applies everywhere, right? You know, until you get clear on what you want, it's not, how are you going to know when it shows up,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and you keep throwing back, and like, you know, you go back also with like, what do you want was the first question, right? Versus, because they're always like, this is what I don't want. I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want this. I don't want that. And he better not smoke, right?
Yeah.
Right, right. And then like in the end, you're like, well, that's great. And those are the things that keep showing up. What do you actually want though? Because that's what you're putting out there, right? Energetic.
And I think that applies in all areas of life. Like we are so, I don't know about you, but like growing up, I kind of had a fear of saying what I really wanted because it was like, don't jinx it. Like you don't want to jinx it,
Right.
you know? And so I've gotten very clear about, no, this is what I want. This is what I'm calling in. Like, even in dating, we were joking recently with my friends, like a few months ago, I was like, I want to meet a guy. And I went on this litany, like so specific. I was like, I want someone like this. I want someone like this. Like, I want Richard Gere and Pretty Woman. Like, I was saying, like, it was just, we're having this conversation. And then like 2 weeks later, I meet this guy who is everything I very clearly and intentionally have stated that I wanted. And that applies in business, that applies in relationships. Like, we should have such clarity around what we are calling into our lives and what we're seeking. And then just like when you say, like, I want this particular type of car, like you start to see that car everywhere. It's the same thing with our business, our relationships, our friendships, like all of it.
Yeah, I mean, talk to that though too a little bit, right? Like the idea of being okay with stating what you desire, right? But also being okay with not knowing how it's going to show up, right? Because I think that that's where a big part where people kind of get busted, right? They're like, well, it has to happen like this. Here's how I see it happening, right? Do you coach people to say, listen, stop worrying so much about the how and just get clear on what it is you actually want to show up?
Yeah, and also have flexibility with the way it's going to be. Like, we don't always know how things are going to turn out. And maybe you have something, like you want something, but the only reason you want it is because that want and that desire and the actions you take to get there are actually going to teach you something and open your eyes up to something else that you want.
Right.
So like, life often doesn't look like what we imagine with our narrow, rational animal brain. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
When you decide, you're kind of going into this space, how much actually opened up, right? Like, you and just like you're saying here, like you probably saw like a few small pieces of what was possible. How much has it actually opened up for you?
So much. But I also, like, when I decide to do something, I decide to do it. And so when I started my business, I moved from Philadelphia to Phoenix, Arizona, and I knew no one here. And I decided that I was going to go balls to the wall and meet everybody in this community. And I, every day of the week for a 3-month period of time, said, you have to connect with a new person. You either have to have coffee with them, have a Zoom with them, do a podcast with them. For 3 months straight, Monday through Friday, I met a new human being and intentionally put effort into that. And it's been the greatest blessing and benefit to my business.
That's awesome. No, I mean, look, that's a great approach too, right? And I don't think that you have to move across the country to do it either, right?
No.
Like, I think that a lot of people are hesitant to kind of go jump into a new space again because it's new, right? And put themselves out there. But the funny thing is when you go to a new place or go to like new meetings and meet up with new people, hey, they don't know who you are. They've never met you before, so you can be whoever you want, right? Like in that space, right? You can bring the best of who you think you are in that moment there. Right?
Totally.
Yeah, I love it. Anything you think we should have covered by now that you'd throw out there?
No, I mean, that I feel like we talked about so many different things.
Right. Books that altered like your whole perception.
The first book, there's a few. Dr. Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself was probably one of the greatest tools of my life. It's a little science heavy at the beginning, but once you get into it, it really taught me that I can really change who I am and how my brain works. Louise Hay, she really showed me the power of mantras and affirmations and the metaphysical world. David Hawkins, he was a power versus force. And my favorite book of his is called Letting Go. It's all about letting go of the control that we think we have. That's an illusion. A big one for me was Gabby Bernstein's Spirit Junkie. It's all about all the love. The biggest thing about Gabby and what she teaches is that, especially early writings of hers, all the love that we need in the world is inside of us.
Right.
And so stop seeking what we're seeking from the outside world. I would say those books in the beginning, like, were the biggest teachers for me.
Right.
And then I also, like, I invest in coaches. I always have a coach. I'm always in a mastermind. Me and a couple of my girlfriends who are coaches, we just started a weekly accountability group to kick each other's asses.
Right.
So I always am working with somebody and always having somebody I'm accountable to.
Are you inspired by like Jim Rohn on that one? Would, like, surround yourself with like the 5 people that you surround yourself by? What kind of drives you to want to do that? Or is that just innate?
That's innate. I have always, I'm a communal person. So if I'm going to do something great, I want to do great things with great people. And it's been like that. When I was in law school, I had a group of girlfriends and we studied for every single exam together. We studied for the bar exam together. Like, your success is my success.
Yeah.
And that's how I've always lived my life. And then when I got into business and into the world that I'm in, I joined a mastermind in LA, which was just the best experience. I loved that group so much. And from there, I gained these beautiful entrepreneur friends, and we are each other's biggest cheerleaders. We refer each other clients. Yeah.
Who's your ideal client?
My ideal client is I will work with men or women. I tend to work more with women. I want somebody who has a desire on their heart that they are not fulfilling right now. And they want to figure out the structure and the system and the mechanism through which they can put it out into the world. I want to work with people, and I work with people who they've already decided. I don't want somebody who is like, I don't know, maybe I want to do this thing. No, I want people who are like on their journey. They have decided it's time to make a change. They are just at that point where they're like, I need somebody to coach me and teach me how to do these things.
Right. Right. No, amen. Right. Amen. Like, if they're not ready to take the leap, right? Like, you can't push them.
Right.
Does that make sense? Right. I mean, they got to be ready. You're really just there to pick up the pieces.
Right. And also, like, I'm there to teach the concepts and to provide information and to encourage.
Right.
But the power is in the person who is taking the action.
For sure. I love it. I love it. Where should everybody reach out to you? Like, where should we go find you?
So I probably spend most of my time on Instagram at ReginaLawrence, LAWRENCE. And then my website is ReginaLawrence.com. And that has some good freebies on it and different ways that people can work with me.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out today and, joining me and sharing your story with everybody.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.